Hachtravaha Sakshanmaha Bhagavato Ajashir Hayamer Haya Shutstritshrama Yutodino Naivasmachchapamarhati Dharma Palonarapati Sadhu Samrat Brihachtravaha Sakshan Maha Bhagavato Rajashir Hayamer Hayat Kshutritshrama Yutodino Naivasmachchapamarhati.
Dharma Palonarapati Sadhu Samrat
Brihachtravaha
Sakshan Maha
Bhagavato
Rajarishir Hayamedyat
Rajashir Hayamedyat
Shutritshrama Yutodino
Naivasmachchapamarhati. Dharmapalaha, the protector of religion. Narapatihi, the king. Saha, he. Tu, but. Samrat, emperor. Brihat, highly. Shravaha, celebrated. Sakshat, directly. Mahabhagavata, the first class devotee of the Lord. Raja Rishi, saint amongst the royal order. Hayamer Hayat, great performer of horse sacrifices. Kshut, hunger. Trit, thirst. Shrama Yutaha, tired and fatigued. Dinaha, stricken. Na, never. Eva, thus. Asmat, by us. Shapam, curse. Arhati, deserves. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Emperor Parikshit is a pious king. He is highly celebrated and is a first-class devotee of the personality of Godhead. He is a saint amongst royalty, and he has performed many horse sacrifices. When such a king is tired and fatigued, being stricken with hunger and thirst, he does not at all deserve to be cursed. Purport. After explaining the general codes relating to the royal position and asserting that the king can do no wrong and therefore is never to be condemned, the sage Shamika wanted to say something about Emperor Parikshit specifically. The specific qualification of Maharaj Parikshit is summarized herein. The king, even calculated as a king only, was most celebrated as a ruler who administered the religious principles of the royal order. In the Shastras, the duties of the castes and orders of society are prescribed. All the qualities of a Kshatriya mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita were present in the person of the emperor. He was also a great devotee of the Lord and a self-realized soul. Cursing such a king when he was tired and fatigued with hunger and thirst was not at all proper. Shamika Rishi thus admitted from all sides that Maharaj Parikshit was cursed most unjustly. Although all the Brahmanas were aloof from the incident, still for the childish action of a Brahmin boy, a whole world situation was changed. Thus Rishi Shamika, a Brahmin, took responsibility for all deterioration of the good orders of the world. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjanashlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadhutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Namo Krishna Palaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutam Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Vishesha Shrivadi Vishtya Rishatarini Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaur Krishnaya Namaha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Vedate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishvanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpa Durvyascha Kriva Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Maharaj Parikshit is the main character of this section and actually the whole Bhagavatam. And we understand that Maharaj Parikshit, he's a pure devotee. He's not only a pious king, but he's also a pure devotee of the Lord. And you know that even from childhood he was worshiping the deity of the Lord. And even when his parents would call him for a meal, he would say, first I must finish offering worship to the deity. So these are the activities of self-realized souls, nityasiddhas, who are Krishna conscious from birth, and in fact are associates of the Lord who have come to this earth to assist in the leelas of the Lord. And as we know, this is a very famous act where a pure devotee is supposedly acting in an angry, prideful way. That why am I being treated this way by this rishi? And then he puts the snake on the shoulder of Shamika Rishi. But we'll talk more about that later. So the king, he committed this so-called offense, and we have read previously in this chapter how the son of Shamika Rishi, Shringi, he actually heard about this while he was out playing with his friends, and on that spot he let out a curse. At first he compared the king to a dog, saying that why should the class, the Brahmin class, which is supposed to be the head of society, why is it that some king who's some upstart is just offending him in this way? Actually, the king should be waiting on the king like a dog, like a guard at the door. So he commits so many vocal offenses to Maharaj Parikshit at that time, and then he actually he puts a curse on him that he'll die in 7 days. And and this curse, as we've been hearing Shamika Rishi speak about how it's actually so unjustified, this curse. It's like very much overkill. It's like if there's a mosquito and you want to kill it, you take out a machine gun to kill the mosquito. It's kind of a bit too much. And you end up shooting some people in the room, but the mosquito is still alive. So it's very much uncalled for. And so we have, in this pastime, we have two different reactions that are very important that we can study. First is this reaction of Shringi, which is based on kind of false pride, anger, envy, and a desire for vengeance, which if you hear what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita about the qualities of a Brahmana, it's peacefulness, honesty, self-control, being knowledgeable on the scriptures, being tolerant, actually, these are qualities that you don't see in Shringi, who's a supposed Brahmin. But somehow he still has this Brahmin tejas. He's able to offer this curse. And it's confirmed in this verse in Srila Prabhupada's purport that from this childish action of this so-called Brahmin, actually the whole world situation has changed. That actually now this is signifying the corruption of the Brahmin class, which is it's a very key ingredient for the Kali Yuga to take hold over society in the entire world, because the Brahmin class is compared to the head of society or the mouth of society, whereas the Kshatriyas are the arms, the Vaishyas are the thighs, and the Shudras are the feet. The the Brahmin class, they're depended on for spiritual guidance, for a moral compass to guide the rest of society, specifically the leaders of society, the Kshatriyas. And when you have a breach in the purity of these people who are supposed to be very pure, then there's no longer purity that can come in the other classes. Actually, they also become corrupted. So Shringi is representing this impurity. This Brahmanas are supposed to be they're supposed to be have detached guidance which they give to the king without any personal interest in any wealth, fame, position. The Brahman should just be satisfied with having very meager possessions, living a very simple life. But Brahmanas, once they develop some desire for actually having a personal interest in the king's decisions, or having a desire for a great position within the kingdom, or fame for themselves, they're very renounced or they're very devoted or something like that, then their purity becomes lost. And we see that when society loses faith in the Brahmanas, who are supposed to be very pure, then the members of society, they have no example to look to for these qualities, these saintly qualities. And then when those saintly qualities are gone from the society, especially the leaders, then what is left for the people? It's only to mimic the qualities that they see in their leaders, because they're following them. And then you get a whole degraded society that comes out of that. And one example in the modern age is that for many thousands of years, the Catholic Church, it had like almost absolute power, over its entire reign, the Roman Empire. The Catholic Church had so much power over decisions of who owns the land, who's appointed to take care of it, where is the money spent, things like this. And over time, we see in the Dark Ages and in the Renaissance especially, there were some very, very, very degraded popes who actually, they started taking on many wives, having many children, engaging in intoxication and taking bribes. And then they started to engage in favoring their family members for posts of like bishops, cardinals, things like that. So it's quite obvious, they're very corrupted people. And this is one reason, among many others, why the church lost power. Many societies, they were taken over by monarchs who, we've been discussing how there's no true monarchs. This is like a main theme of the Bhagavatam in this section, how there's no true monarchs who are qualified to lead society according to religious principles. Well, also, in Kali Yuga, it's very rare to find saintly people, holy people who are actually following the principles set forth by God himself or his pure representative. Just like we don't see any Christians who are truly following Jesus Christ. Even if they seem like they have great qualities, they're very pious, they do good things for others, there's always some bad habit that they may have, some kind of lust. And they're not using their time 100% to engage in God's service. So it's very rare to meet somebody who's actually following a very bona fide and character transforming path. That's why Srila Prabhupada has instigated this, this Krishna conscious movement to create a Brahmin class in society, to restore spiritual vision to the head of society, and therefore to keep it from further degradation. And unfortunately, not many people can actually recognize who is, a truly saintly person who is actually worthy of taking guidance from, because it's a symptom of Kali Yuga that what is actually irreligion is taken to be religion, and what is true religion is taken to be irreligion. And people ascribe importance to things which actually have no value, and those things which are very valuable, people, toss them away and don't really care so much. And that's just a symptom of the age of Kali Yuga. But those sincere souls, they're out there, and they will take up to the message if they're truly sincere. And and yeah, so we must uphold these values and principles and philosophical conclusions that have been passed down to us through the disciplic succession, and maintain our purity as not only as Brahmanas but as Vaishnavas, because of course the Vaishnava is transcendental to the designation as a Brahmana, as Srila Prabhupada has said many times. And actually, the Padma Purana, there's one verse which says that if one is a Brahmin, but he's not a Vaishnava, then actually there's no true value in that position. An expert Brahmana may not be a Vaishnava, but a Vaishnava, he is a Brahmin. And so that is the reaction of Shringi. We see how he's representing this fallen Brahmin class. And now we see in his father's reaction, we see something a bit different, which we've been hearing the past few verses from verse 41 to 46, 47. It'll continue how his father actually, when he awoke from his meditation, he saw his son crying, and he very soberly asked him, "Why are you crying? Has somebody done you any harm?" Things like that. And then when his son told him actually what had happened, we see that Shamika Rishi, he didn't immediately just become, he didn't become angry at all. He didn't become, wanting to punish his son or take revenge or just yell at him or anything like that. He had a very Brahminical response, very much of the mode of goodness. He started explaining to his son actually the gravity of his mistake, explaining the consequences and what all this will actually do to society. In a very logical way, he explained this to his son. And this is a very valuable lesson. Actually, when I was in Pune, Radhesham Prabhu, he used this pastime to speak about one Vaishnava etiquette that's very important, is that when you're offering correction to a junior devotee, because he has committed some mistake, if you want them to actually understand it and actually make a change in their lifestyle and behavior, you have to first logically present like why this is a mistake, why is it serious, and what are the consequences if you continue this mistake. And then the devotee will they'll be able to understand it. And as long as there's a relationship of love and trust between the senior and the junior, then the junior will want to rectify his mistake. But if one jumps to conclusions quickly and just blames and doesn't offer any logical explanation as to why this is wrong, then a feeling of resentment might come about in that relationship. So that's what Radhesham Prabhu was speaking about. And so we see Shamika Rishi, this is what he's doing with his son. He's just giving him like counsel, basically, talking about the glorious position of Maharaj Parikshit in this verse, saying that not only is he a first-class devotee, he's a saint amongst all kings, and he's done so much for the nation. And just because he's a bit tired and thirsty, he's kind of acted out of line, so to speak, and he doesn't actually deserve to be cursed at all. And so you see that Shamika Rishi, he's basing all of his explanations off of Shastra versus the whims of his own mind. And he's also speaking in a very detached and compassionate manner, because actually he's caring a lot for the suffering of humanity that will inevitably come about through the decision of his son. And one very important thing is, Srila Prabhupada mentions here how the Rishi, since he's a Brahmin, actually he took the responsibility for his son's mistake. He took the responsibility of the consequences which will happen is the deterioration of the good orders of the world. And that's very significant. If any degradation comes in the world, it's due to there being a lack of spiritual knowledge, which is the responsibility of the Brahmanas to propagate and share with the world. We see how the Sankirtan movement experienced a dark age after Lord Chaitanya left, and his later associates also left. There was a general lack in strong philosophical conclusions coming from the Shastras, and more a rise of sentimentalism. And those few pure devotees who remained, they seeing such degraded activities, and many so-called Vaishnavas were kind of being seen in public places. They were not qualified Vaishnavas. They were Sahajiyas. They were misrepresenting the Sampradaya, and so society had a really bad perspective on Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So those pure devotees who did remain, they mostly went into seclusion and remained in the Babaji order and preserved the teachings in that manner. And and of course, with the advent of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, these teachings were revived, and Sankirtan movement could flourish again. But there's always the risk of this happening again. Actually, if we compromise our principles, or if we don't study Srila Prabhupada's books intently, and if we're not able to pass on the knowledge correctly, the correct understanding, then this can always happen. And so we should also feel a responsibility. Like, this is a great responsibility on us, to preserve, protect, and propagate the Sankirtan movement and the Siddhanta, the previous acharyas who've passed it on to us. And not only that, we should also feel responsible for the condition of all of the suffering souls in this world. We should feel that, it's as the aspiring servant of the servants of my spiritual master, I meant to go out there on the front lines and give the books, give the knowledge, try and cultivate people into the correct understanding. Because if I don't, actually, they will deteriorate even further as Kali Yuga goes on. So this was the responsibility that Shamika Rishi was showing, that he took this on himself. And it's actually a very humble thing that he did. He could have blamed his son, but he did not. And the last thing I'll talk about is something very interesting I noticed in the explanations between, like, if you just read Shamika Rishi's explanations, I'll just read a few of them just to refresh your memory. He speaks about how the citizens of the state live in prosperity, being protected by the unsurpassable prowess of the king. And he who carries the wheel of a chariot is represented by the monarchical regime. And when this regime is abolished, the whole world becomes filled with thieves who then at once vanquish the unprotected subjects like scattered lambs. Due to the termination of monarchical regimes and the plundering of people's wealth by rogues and thieves, there will be great social disruptions. People will be killed and injured, animals and women will be stolen. And for these sins, we shall be responsible. And in the verse we read yesterday, at that time, people in general will follow systematically from the path of self-realization and civilized human life, and the caste and orders of society will degrade, and they will actually be more attracted to sense gratification, and there will be unwanted population on the levels of dogs and monkeys. So I don't know if this jogs your memory, but in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna also offers very similar explanations as to why he felt he was justified in not fighting and not doing his duty. He was saying almost, very, very similar things. He was saying, sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it's improper for us to kill these relatives. How can we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? And he says that what pleasure will we derive from killing them? So it's very interesting. There's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences between these two kind of monologues that we read. So both Arjuna and Shamika, they have concern for society, for people suffering due to degradation. However, Shamika Rishi, as I said, he's speaking from a detached point of view, and he's actually concerned for all of society who will be affected by the reign of Kali Yuga. Whereas Arjuna, in these statements, he's influenced by personal attachment to family, to the kingdom, to his own fear of his own actions and responsibility. And in both cases, these two personalities, they're reluctant to harm righteous persons. Like I said, Shamika, he's concerned for the king and the world, whereas Arjuna, he's concerned for his own relatives. So it's a little bit more narrow. And they're both speaking from a place of compassion, because the Vaishnava has a compassionate heart. But ultimately, Arjuna is basing his arguments on his own understanding, not on what Krishna has said, because of course Krishna had not spoken at that time. And Shamika Rishi, he's using his argument has a lot of scriptural integrity, and actually it's in line with Dharma, that the king is never at fault, because if he is true king, because he's supposed to be a Rajarshi, he's supposed to be representing Krishna on this earth. And so these are both instances, of course, where the pure devotee is influenced by Yoga Maya into a state of bewilderment. Maharaj Parikshit, he had, as a pure Vaishnav, very tolerant, humble, he had no reason to offend a rishi like this by putting a snake on his shoulder, becoming angry. It was all the arrangement of Krishna. And actually it's so that Maharaj Parikshit would receive the curse, he would renounce the kingdom, and he would meet Shukadeva Goswami, and so that the Bhagavatam would be spoken. Similarly, Arjuna's bewilderment was so that Krishna could speak the Bhagavad Gita. And so, therefore, because of these two instances, we have the two most important literatures that we're studying today, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, by which we can acquire knowledge and cultivate bhakti for Krishna, transcendental knowledge. And it's very interesting. Why is it that devotees are becoming bewildered? Why does Krishna arrange it in this way? Why doesn't he just, speak the knowledge without any other external situations happening? And it's because in Kali Yuga, many people are very forgetful. They lack spiritual understanding. They can't understand like metaphysical topics so easily, and so therefore the Lord arranges this kind of like a drama, like that we can relate to in story form, and this question and answer format, which we're seeing many times in Bhagavatam. We're reading a conversation which is within a conversation within a conversation within a narration. So it goes very deep, and spiritual topics can be explored to a great extent in that manner. Whereas in previous ages, people had more sharp intelligence, sharper memories. And so some scripture like the Vedanta Sutra, which is only in like aphorism form, it's like very brief statements, very cryptic. It might be more easily understood by those people, but for us, if we tried to find some meaning there, we would have faulty interpretations and we'd be led off the path totally. So it's actually Krishna's mercy on us that he's arranged these very interesting dramas, that keeps us interested in wanting to read more, and and yeah, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's this one verse that talks about that. It says, Maya mugda jivera nahi swata Krishna gyan, jivera kripaya koila Krishna veda puran. That the conditioned soul cannot revive his Krishna consciousness by his own effort, but out of his causeless mercy, Lord Krishna gives us the Vedic literatures. So it's Krishna's expression of mercy and love for us suffering here in this world, that he gives these scriptures by which we can actually come out of it and come to love him. Yeah, I think that's all I got for you guys. That's all I prepared. So any questions or corrections? Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is it even possible to bring back a monarchical rule? Because obviously Prabhupada is giving these instructions, and they're quite, they're very much in relationship to like the social structure of society. So should we be applying these principles to the management of ISKCON? Should there be an effort to create varnashram communities like we see with Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, Bhakti Raghava Maharaj? Because sometimes there's a disconnect between what's in Prabhupada's purports and then like how do we actually practically apply it. A lot of it's practical when it comes to social organization. Sometimes it seems like there's a gap between the way the general devotees are living and then what Prabhupada's expecting in his books. How do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people like take like one quote of Prabhupada and like have different interpretations on what it means, things like that. But I guess that's why having the association of like people who are very much in Prabhupada consciousness, like as direct disciples or followers, they know more of the heart of Srila Prabhupada. But yeah, I mean, even Prabhupada himself, he didn't he established the GBC, which is it's not like a monarchy or not really reminiscent of that. It seems like it's more of a democracy type of thing. Although he was also stressing varnashram, which implies having a monarchy, right? So, yeah, but it seemed like the main thing that he wanted was to establish a class of brahmanas in society, and from there, yeah, who knows? He also said that like some countries can become Krishna conscious. I would think that maybe some kind of monarchical rule could come about, but I think that's like way beyond us right now. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any further insight in that, Prabhu?
Well, to do a varnashram, you have to have the whole society. You have the brahmanas, kshatriyas. I mean, kshatriyas also. Like, to find real kshatriyas, like, good luck. Real brahmanas. So, yeah, you have to have a whole society. Like, Parikar Maharaj, Yudhishthira, there's a whole society. Like, real brahmanas, real kshatriyas. Now it's like,
yeah, that's my point, is that where is the connection between the instructions which Prabhupada is giving in his purports for the organization of society, and then where can it be practically implemented? Because I don't think Prabhupada is just speaking about it for the sake of a history lesson.
well, they said when We have the GBC, that's about as far as we can go.
And there's like these farm projects that are coming up.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like those are the closest.
And I think your point is interesting, how Prabhupada was so critical of democracy. And he established the GDC, but then he was also emphasizing the ideal form of rule as monarchy. So
maybe as a concession, if that democracy is Krishna conscious.
One thought is that the GBC is it's a Brahminical board, ideally.
Democracy also. They vote who's going to be the GBC.
Yeah.
But if it's devotees only voting, then
and if it's a Brahminical order of people, like they have a Shastric advisory board, which is clearly supposed to be Brahminical. And anyways, I'm just wondering. It's always a question in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like if a really solid amount of people became Krishna conscious, then they would be able to properly elect a leader who could actually, guide them in spiritual life.
Yeah. But then also you could say that unless we have a leader who's Krishna conscious, it's very difficult for a large number of people to become Krishna conscious. Having that leader really makes a difference. Like look at ISV. It's a powerful leader, so a lot of people are becoming devotees. Chaupadi, powerful leader. Delhi, powerful leader. Mayapur, powerful leader. And then you see places which the leaders are more functioning in a managerial role rather than like a spiritual leadership role. Things may be maintained, but people may not be joining that. And if they are, it's more of a drip rather than... I mean, last night, I don't know if you guys noticed when they were doing the reflections, or the meet and greet, and everyone was meeting each other. Were you there?
Yeah.
Practically all the people that they were meeting were people who've gotten Bhagavatams. All the people they were talking to, this person got books and they just decided to come to the temple. This person bought Bhagavatam said a few years ago, now they're chanting. It was like one after the other, people who were getting books and they're coming to the temple and they're becoming devotees. You don't see that at a lot of temples. So you can't just have a manager.
You need more Vaisheshika Maharaj.
You need like the guru to be.
You need acharyas, and Prabhupada had this idea of like Brahmana Satriyas. You should have administrative leaders who are spiritually very sharp and can enliven people with.
It's very rare to have a good leader and also spiritually inspiring.
Yeah.
Very rare. But that's Radha Swami Vaisheshika Maharaj.
Yeah.
And then I always tell the two of them, if we only had 100 more of the two of you, we'd take over the world.
Yeah.
So important to have both managerial ability and spiritual inspiration.
Yeah. And Ramnath Maharaj, what makes him an expert manager is he knows how to identify expert managers. He may not be in like the grind of it all, but he knows to identify who can.
Gauranga.
Gauranga, Radhesham Prabhu, Radha Gopinath Prabhu. He knows to identify them and bring out the potential.
Yeah.
So it's not just about being a manager. Someone could be a manager, but they may not be effective at creating leaders. The difference between leaders and managers.
Yeah.
So, at least from my understanding, this is the direction. If you read the statements which Prabhupada makes about what he expected his GDC men to do, it seems like you know better than me, the example which Prabhupada is speaking about in terms of the GBC should travel around and set the spiritual standard of our temples. It seems like they're supposed to be moving in the direction of at least the way they conduct themselves. Ramnath Maharaj and Vaisheshika. But so generally, sometimes you'll see that the GBC is a manager, and they come around and it's good, but it may not bring the potential out of people for devotional service.
Yeah. Seems like that. Yeah, you would need someone to be very spiritual, inspiring.
Yeah.
But even Prabhupada, remember some past time, a devotee said like, yeah, we're going to make a Krishna conscious country or something, and we'll make you the president. And he said, like, no, I'll be the advisor to the president.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
But I guess if you have a leader who's like managing, and then you have like someone else who's like providing, like, is it possible to have like two managers, one who's kind of more managerial, the other one is more of like a spiritual leader?
Yeah, I think even the spiritual leader has some managerial know-how, but there's a certain level of detachment as well to allow people to make mistakes. Just to berate people for every single mistake that they make is not really effective. But you see sometimes, every little thing that someone does, they just get berated for. But give them space to exercise the inspiration they're getting from Krishna and see how it plays out. I mean, if money's not getting lost, if people aren't breaking the regulative principles, and someone has some inspiration in a particular direction, I think a leader has to give space in order to allow that vision to manifest, and also resources to a reasonable degree. And then that person can kind of rise as someone who could be potentially taking some of the responsibility which that leader has to take on, because that person was given an opportunity to turn sand into gold. Then they're able to lighten the load of that person, and then that person, the superior, is able to function more in the capacity of guiding consciousness rather than just managing resources. Anyways, Vishal Prabhu, DJ Prabhu.
I want to say that you were asking why is it associated with, because Chanakya in his Chanakya Niti, he says that money always corrupts. So that's why the Brahmana class is not known as a wealthy class. It's known as a poor Brahmana always when we read it. So they are dissociated from money so that the money does not corrupt the decision-making capacity. And then the Kshatriyas are administrative, so they seek advice from the Brahmanical class and then execute on that. So that's generally how it's always. And even when Chanakya was there, he was the advisor to King Bindusara and King Chandragupta Maurya and Ashoka. He was the advisor to all of them, and they always seek this advice. So there was never any corruption in the way the decision process was made. And you were also commenting on how Shamik Rishi made he made points that were rooted in Shastra. And I think there is also Gaurav Maharaj's wishes that when someone is speaking on Krishna conscious topics, they would root their points on the Shastra conclusions and then make it in an authoritative manner. So Shamik Rishi was also, he's following that same chain of thought. And the last point I want to make was, you were saying it's Krishna's arrangement that Parikshit Maharaj felt thirsty and then he garlanded Shamik Rishi with this name. And in similar light, Parikshit Maharaj was thirsty for 7 days. He never felt thirst for 7 days. He was completely relishing the Bhagavatam. So clearly it was like a play that Krishna wanted to, so he wanted that to happen, that he was thirsty maybe from a few hours of his expedition, but he was able to sit through a 7-day Bhagavatam discourse without feeling any thirst or hunger. In fact, I think Shukadeva Goswami himself asks, just before the 10th canto begins, how is it that you never felt any thirst or hunger? And he says it's because I'm getting the Bhagavatam, I'm nourished by it. And then Shukadeva Goswami himself also says, and he asks the question again, how come you aren't thirsty or hungry? Because you've been speaking the Bhagavatam to me. And then Shukadeva Goswami himself says, it is because of the eagerness with which you are listening. I have that eagerness to give to you that I don't feel the hunger and thirst. And so the Bhagavatam nourishes both the speaker and the listener in that.
Thanks for
Okay.
Yeah.